Welcome to the climate summary for February of 2022 based on NOAA's climate report that is just issued. First, a quick summary of what's been going on. February was the 7th warmest February on record. That's for 143 years. However, both the UK Met and Berkeley Earth go back to 1850, so it's more like 170 years. And of course, 1850 was the end of the Little Ice Age, so we could quite easily go back to 1350 on that time scale. It was the 6th warmest Northern Hemisphere winter. La Nina is proving stubborn and is projected now to last at least through Northern Hemisphere summer. Some models make it last even longer. Both Antarctic and Arctic sea ice were below average. Carbon dioxide reached a new record at 419.28 parts per million, the highest number in about 20 million years. Let's see how climatic events were distributed across the globe. Arctic sea ice was below average. Antarctic sea ice set a new record low. North America as a whole was below average temperature. Europe was the 7th hottest. Asia was the 8th hottest. Africa was above average. South America as a whole was the 8th hottest. And Polynesia was the 7th hottest. There was flooding in Australia and in Brazil. And La Nina is still there and still affecting the global weather patterns. We can see here the distribution of temperature in the right-hand frame, and you'll see there are no record lows set anywhere across the planet. There were a few record highs, the dark red. Most of the planet is above average or well above average temperatures. Note, however, the La Nina off the western coast of South America seems to have actually deepened. There's a much darker blue there than there was last time we looked at it. And as far as the actual numbers are concerned, the global temperature was 0.81 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. Land was 1.26 degrees centigrade above average. Oceans were 0.64 degrees above average. The Northern Hemisphere was 1.03 degrees above average, and the Southern Hemisphere 0.58 degrees centigrade above average. And the discrepancy between those two is the fact that, of course, the Northern Hemisphere has far more land and the Southern Hemisphere has far more oceans, and the oceans are warming less fast than the land. Here's my matrix showing the ranking of each month over the last few years. And you can see that 2022 February being in 7th place, it seems to be rivaling 2021 so far, at least in terms of temperatures. So 2022 could be in 6th place, which would make it that 8 of the last 8 years were the 8 warmest on record. Let's take a look at the lower troposphere. This is the data published by Roy Spencer. February decrease in global temperatures. You see there's a purple spot right on the 0 line there. And a lot of people are making a big deal about the fact that the temperatures are so low. But if you look back, there have been low points before, but still the overall trend is positive. And currently the trend is showing to be about 0.14 degrees centigrade per decade, which is very similar to the surface temperatures. Note though that these are not surface temperatures. These are measured up several kilometers high in the atmosphere where it's much colder and there's far smaller effect of global warming. Well, let's take a look at another favorite topic of a lot of people, sea ice, which doesn't make a great deal of difference, frankly, apart from the albedo problem. The Arctic sea ice was the 14th smallest on record, so that's still well below average. However, it's not been as low as it has been, say, 4 or 5 years ago. The Antarctic sea ice, on the other hand, showed a deep dive to a much, much lower number. It's the smallest on record by a long, long way. And this is a number that, at least in just a few years ago, was setting record highs. So there's been a very sharp drop-off in the Antarctic sea ice extent. Let's take a look at what La Nina is doing. It seems, according at least to this model, it looks as though La Nina will persist to the summer of this year. That is later than was originally thought. However, a second model shows that La Nina conditions could well persist to the end of this year. So that will mean we've had 3 years of La Nina conditions. But it's worth noting that global temperatures have stagnated, but they have not gone down as a result of La Nina, which forebodes poorly if we should get back into an El Nino anytime soon, because we'll be setting record temperatures left, right, and center. And the reason for that persistence in temperatures is this picture of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's just set a new record at 419.28 parts per million, and that is a record that basically has lasted for 20 million years. So that's very, very worrying. When El Nino returns, the full effect of this rise in greenhouse gases is going to be felt very strongly and will set probably a large number of new high temperatures. For those that believe that a grand solar minimum will save us by cooling the temperatures of the Earth down, I've got some very disappointing news. Here are two plots of the progression of solar cycle 25, and you can see it's well above the projected value for solar cycle 25. So it's a much more active cycle than we expected. And most of us did not even expect a grand solar minimum. These numbers should be right down at the zero line on these plots if we were in a grand solar minimum, and obviously they're not. Solar cycle 25 is continuing to grow, and we're not yet at solar maximum, won't be for at least a couple of years. In February it was very active. We didn't have any X flares, which is a bit of a surprise. We did have 3 M flares and 167 C flares, so the sun is active indeed. And solar 25 is still ahead of most of the predictions that were made a couple of years ago, and particularly well ahead of any of those that subscribed to a grand solar minimum. Quick summary then of what we've learned. La Nina continues and may continue for the rest of the year. Globally, it was the 7th hottest February on record. Solar cycle 25 is more active than forecasted so far. So that's it for today. So until next time, stay safe and goodbye.